Fear doesn't scream. It doesn't announce itself like a bullhorn on your chart. It whispers, subtle, quiet, deadly. You'll feel it as an inner tug telling you, maybe wait a little longer. Just one more candle. Let's see if the market confirms. That voice, that whisper isn't caution, it's fear. And it's the silent assassin of trading accounts around the world. See, most traders think fear is that gut-wrenching panic when a trade goes against them. But that's not how it usually kills. Fear is far more elegant, more patient. It infects your decision-making long before you realize it. It hides behind logic, pretends to be strategy, and it convinces you that you're being smart when really, you're just scared. Let me give you an example. Imagine two traders. Both see the same high-probability setup forming. The market lines up. Risk is defined. Signal is clear. Trader A pulls the trigger without hesitation. Trader B hesitates, then waits, then tells himself, I'll enter after the next confirmation. But the market doesn't wait. It moves without him. Now Trader B is frustrated, not because he lost money, but because he let fear dictate the moment. And here's the kicker. He doesn't even realize it was fear. That's how it wins. Fear masquerades as logic, and because of that it goes unchecked. Trade after trade, month after month, account after account, slowly bleeding capital through indecision, inconsistency, and avoidance. And yet most traders never confront it. They chase new strategies, new indicators, but they never deal with the real threat, the whisper behind the wheel. Let me make this clear. You don't need more information. You don't need more confirmation. You need courage, clarity, and control over the voice that whispers don't. Because until you face that voice, it will quietly guide your every move. Until your account balance hits zero, and you still won't know what happened. Fear doesn't come for your trades. It comes for your conviction, and that is where the real danger lies. So the question becomes, how do you recognize it before it strikes? And once you do, how do you take back control of the cockpit before the whole thing crashes? Let's dive deeper. Most traders spend their entire careers trying to fight the market. They think it's them versus price, them versus volatility, them versus the algorithm, the whales, and the institutions. But here's the truth. The market isn't your enemy. It's your mirror. Every flicker of fear, every surge of greed, every ounce of hesitation, it all shows up in your trades. Not because of what the market does, but because of what you feel. You see, fear doesn't exist in the charts. It exists in you. It's not in that red candle. It's in the meaning you attach to it. It's not in the losing trade. It's in your refusal to accept loss as part of the process. That's the part most traders never understand. They think fear is something the market creates. But the market doesn't care about you. It doesn't even know you exist. Fear comes from the stories you bring to it, the unresolved emotions you've carried into every trade. Let me show you how it sneaks in. You enter a trade. It moves slightly against you. Instantly, your heart rate spikes. You start watching every tick. Your brain says, get out before it gets worse. You exit early, and seconds later, the market reverses back in your direction. Sound familiar? That's fear wearing a suit of logic. Or maybe you just took a big loss yesterday. You wake up today, determined to make it back. You enter trades faster, bigger, and riskier. That's not confidence. That's fear. Fear of loss, fear of being wrong, fear of looking like a fool. It's revenge trading, driven not by market opportunity, but by emotional imbalance. And then there's the other side, the fear of missing out. You see the move already halfway done and your hands itch. You can't stand watching others win while you sit still. So you jump in late, driven by the emotion you swore you'd avoid. Now you're trapped again. Fear has infinite disguises. Sometimes it's hesitation. Sometimes it's overconfidence. Sometimes it's the voice that says, protect yourself. And sometimes it's the one that screams, go all in. But in every case, the source is the same. It's not the trade. It's not the market. It's you. Because deep down, fear is ancient. Survival. Your brain was built to protect you from tigers, not trading losses. It reacts to a red candle the same way it would to a rustle in the bushes, as if your life is in danger. That's why your palms sweat. That's why your pulse races. That's why your logic vanishes the moment money is on the line. But here's the brutal truth. You can't trade like a hunter and expect to win in an environment built for mathematicians. Fear turns traders into prey, reacting, fleeing, attacking, hoping. Professionals? They operate like surgeons, cold, precise, detached. They've learned to see fear not as an enemy, but as a signal. When they feel it, they don't react. They observe, they breathe, they check their system, and they execute anyway. That's the line between amateurs and pros. Amateurs fight the market. Pros face themselves. The next time you feel that whisper of fear, don't look at the chart. Look in the mirror, because that's where the problem began, and that's where it must end. But if fear isn't coming from the market, then where do we learn to control it? To silence the survival instinct and trade from clarity instead of panic? To understand that, we need to step into a place where fear has no power at all. A place where probabilities, not emotions, decide the outcome. And that brings us to the next lesson. The casino that never blinks. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you saw a casino panic after a single bad spin of the roulette wheel? Never. You won't see the pit boss flinch. You won't see security rushing over. No alarms, no panic. Because the casino knows something that most traders never fully understand. It's not about the outcome of one spin. It's about the edge playing out over time. See, casinos aren't in the business of winning every hand. They're in the business of statistical certainty. They don't blink, because they don't need to. Now compare that to the average trader. One trade goes red, and suddenly it's full meltdown mode. They're questioning the setup, the market, and themselves. They start tweaking the system, moving stops, and chasing reversals. Why? Because they're emotionally attached to a single outcome. They're treating one trade like it defines everything. That's not trading. That's gambling. But worse, it's fear-based gambling. Let's go deeper. Imagine a blackjack table. The house edge is only about 0.5% when players use basic strategy. Tiny edge, right? But here's the thing. That edge, stretched over tens of thousands of hands, guarantees profit for the casino. Not because they're psychic, but because they're disciplined. They don't need to know if the next hand wins. They just need the volume and consistency to let their edge manifest. Now ask yourself, do you trade like a casino? Or do you panic like a player who just lost 2 hands in a row? The truth is, fear thrives in short-term thinking. It preys on those who stare at one trade, as if it determines their fate. Fear grows when you need every trade to work, because now your identity is on the line. Now you're trading not to follow a system, but to avoid pain. That's when things get dangerous. You start skipping setups because what if it fails? You size down randomly. Or worse, you size up to make back what you just lost. And the whole time you're ignoring the real principle that keeps casinos rich. Probability doesn't care about your feelings. Let me repeat that. Probability doesn't care how afraid you are. It doesn't bend to hope. It doesn't break under pressure. But you might, if your ego is bigger than your sample size. Fear takes over when the outcome of one trade feels like a personal verdict. But to the professional, it's just another spin, another card. Another roll of the dice. The professional doesn't blink. Just like the casino. So how do you start thinking like the house? Here's the shift. Detach from the next trade. Fall in love with execution, not results. Build a system with a real edge, and then trade it mechanically. Like a dealer shuffling cards. Like a slot machine running numbers. Like a casino that knows it will win. As long as it doesn't break discipline. The difference between you and the casino? One plays to avoid losing. The other plays to let the edge win. You want to kill fear? Then stop measuring success by the last outcome. Start measuring it by how well you executed your system. Because the trader who thinks like a casino, that trader never blinks either. Let's keep going and explore what happens when 2 traders face the same trade. But one is ruled by fear, and the other is ruled by discipline. 2 traders, same market, same chart, same setup. But 2 entirely different outcomes. Why? Let's meet Trader A and Trader B. Both have been studying the markets for months. Both have access to the same data, same tools, same broker, and same time frame. But the difference isn't in their strategy. It's in how they process fear. Trader A starts the morning the same way every day. They review their rules, check their predefined setups. They know their edge. They trust it. They accept fully that not every trade will win. So when a signal appears, Trader A doesn't hesitate. They enter. Stop loss? Already set. Target? Already planned. Emotions? Not suppressed. just irrelevant to the process. They sit back and let the trade play out. Now Trader B? Trader B also sees the signal. They recognize the same opportunity, but something's different. They just took a loss yesterday, a painful one. And even though this setup looks good, they hesitate. What if it fails again? What if this is another trap? The fear creeps in, so they wait. The candle closes. The market moves. They missed it. Regret hits. Now they feel behind. So on the next move they chase. The entry is late. Risk is higher. They panic. They exit early. Another loss. And another shot to their confidence. Here's what most traders don't see. Trader A didn't win because of strategy. Trader B didn't lose because of the market. They both stood at the same crossroads. Only one had the mindset to execute without fear. Fear made Trader B size down drastically after a loss, even though the setup was valid. Fear made them skip opportunities. Fear made them enter too late or exit too early. Trader A, they respected risk, yes, but they didn't let risk dictate their behavior. Let me say this clearly, it's not about being fearless. It's about having a process that functions even when fear shows up. Trader A knows fear will come, but they've built habits, rules, and systems. A routine that carries them through emotion. They don't trust their feelings. They trust their process. Trader B, on the other hand, reacts to every emotional swing. Their trading is inconsistent because their mindset is inconsistent. They're at the mercy of every losing streak, every missed trade, every red candle. They let fear pilot the plane, and eventually it crashes. This is where most traders break. They think they need a better system, a better indicator. But what they really need is a better internal compass. Because when the market pressures you, and it will, it doesn't matter what strategy you know. It matters who you become under pressure. Trader A survives not because they're smarter, but because they've trained themselves to stay centered. They've made peace with risk. They've learned to execute in spite of discomfort. Trader B, they implode not because they're incapable, but because they refuse to face the emotional storms inside them. And in trading, the storm always comes. So the question is, when the pressure hits, will you be Trader A or Trader B? Now you might be wondering, how do I become more like Trader A? How do I build that inner discipline, that detachment, that lets me execute without fear hijacking my logic? To answer that, we need to step back in time to one of the most legendary case studies in trading history. Group of ordinary people trained to trade like machines and prove that discipline could be taught. Let's talk about the turtle traders. In the early 1980s, a legendary experiment took place, one that would forever challenge what most traders believe about success. The man behind it? Richard Dennis, a wildly successful commodities trader who reportedly turned 1,600 into over $200 million. He had a theory: great traders aren't born, they're made. To prove it, he placed an ad in major newspapers, looking for people with no trading background, no experience, just discipline and the willingness to follow rules. Thousands applied. He chose just a handful. A mix of ordinary people, a blackjack player, a security guard, an accountant, a software engineer. He called them the Turtles, inspired by turtle farms he'd seen in Asia, places where turtles were raised quickly in controlled environments. Dennis believed he could do the same with traders. Train them, systematize them, remove emotion from the equation. What followed was one of the most iconic case studies in trading psychology. The turtle traders were given a simple trend-following system: buy breakouts, cut losses fast, let winners run. But it wasn't the strategy that made them successful. It was how they were trained to obey it without hesitation. No second-guessing, no gut feelings, no exiting early because they felt uncomfortable. They traded like machines. If the system said buy, they bought. If it said sell, they sold. If it hit their stop, they took the loss without flinching. Why? Because Dennis knew the true enemy wasn't the market. It was emotion, fear, doubt, greed, hope. Those are the forces that sabotage traders. Not bad setups, not lack of knowledge, but the inability to follow a system when emotions scream to override it. That's what separated the turtles from the masses. Their detachment, their ability to execute the plan even when it felt wrong, especially when it felt wrong. And guess what? They made millions. In fact, many went on to become full-time professional traders with careers that spanned decades. all from a simple system, executed with cold-blooded discipline. Think about that. While most traders today jump from indicator to indicator, while they exit trades early because they're scared to lose, while they size down drastically after a single loss, the turtles simply followed rules. No emotion, no hesitation, no stories. They didn't need confidence in themselves. They only needed confidence in the system. That's the secret. Because when fear creeps in, when the market tests you, you won't rise to the level of your knowledge. You'll fall to the level of your discipline. That's why a mechanical mindset is so powerful. It takes the weight off your shoulders. It replaces emotional chaos with procedural clarity. You're no longer reacting to the market. You're responding to a playbook. Like a pilot running through a checklist. Like a soldier executing a mission. Like a casino operating on probabilities, not feelings. You eliminate the option to panic. And when panic is off the table, fear loses its grip. Now let's be honest. You're not a machine, and you never will be. But that's okay, because you don't need to be emotionless. You just need a system that runs whether you feel good, bad, scared, or overconfident. The turtle traders weren't superhumans. They were just people who learned to put process over emotion. And that's something you can do too. But let me warn you, even with a system in place, even with rules on paper, fear still shows up. It's not about erasing it. It's about knowing what to do when it arrives. Because fear is part of the game, but giving it power, that's a choice. So how do the elite traders handle it? What do they do in the moment when fear flares up and their brain screams, "Get out," or "Don't enter"? It's time we face a brutal truth. You can't eliminate fear, but you can kill its power. Let's talk about how fear never leaves. Not with more wins, not with more capital, not with more experience. It doesn't vanish when you level up. Just shows up in different clothes, but pros, they don't wait for fear to disappear. They train themselves to act anyway. Think of a fighter. He's stepping into the ring. Gloves on, lights blazing, crowd screaming. Do you think he's fearless? No, he's alert. He's tense. He's human. But he steps forward anyway, because his training kicks in. Or picture a pilot mid-flight when the turbulence hits. Warning lights flash. Passengers panic. But the cockpit stays calm. Why? Because he's rehearsed that moment 1,000 times. His response is automatic. Checklist, breathing, focus, he doesn't feel safe. He feels prepared. That's the difference. See, most traders spend their time chasing an impossible goal, to eliminate fear, to become unshakable, to never feel hesitation again. That mindset, it's a trap. Because the more you try to erase fear, the more power it has over you when it inevitably returns. The elite traders, the real professionals, don't try to delete fear. They expect it. They welcome it. They train their minds to execute despite it. They've built systems that work when their emotions don't. They've rehearsed responses, not reactions. So when fear shows up, and it always does, they don't freeze. They don't flinch. They follow the script. Here's the truth. You will feel fear before every trade that matters. But you don't have to obey it. You can learn to observe it without reacting. That's a skill. It's called detachment. And it's the difference between the trader who gets rattled and the one who gets richer. You see, the goal isn't to become emotionless. It's to become unmoved. You'll feel the fear, but you won't flinch. You'll feel the hesitation, but your finger still clicks by. You'll hear the whisper, but you've trained yourself to ignore it. And here's the best part. The more you act in the presence of fear, the weaker it becomes. Not because it's gone, but because you've stopped feeding it. Fear gets its power from your attention, your obedience, your belief that it's in charge. But when you take action despite fear, you take that power back. Trade by trade, click by click, day by day. So no, you don't have to kill fear to succeed. You just have to stop letting it drive. In the next chapter, we'll break this down even further. You'll learn a 3-step process to interrupt the fear cycle in real time, so you can execute with control, even in the middle of emotional chaos. Let's get tactical. Let's stop talking theory. Let's get tactical, because fear doesn't wait. It doesn't show up politely and ask for permission. It hits you in the moment. When the setup is live, your heart is racing and your money is on the line. And in that moment, you don't need motivation. You need a system for overriding fear before it hijacks your decision-making. Here's the blueprint. 3 steps. Simple in concept, brutal in execution. But if you apply them, They change everything. Step 1, system over emotion. Let me make this crystal clear. Your feelings do not matter. Not in trading. The market doesn't care if you're scared, excited, anxious, or confident. Your job is not to feel your way through the market. Your job is to follow a repeatable system. You want a process that removes guesswork. You want rules that take you out of the equation. Because if you're relying on gut instinct in real time, fear will eat you alive. Think about a casino. It doesn't feel like the roulette wheel might hit black this time. It runs the probabilities over and over without emotion. That's what you need to become. A rules-based operator. Not a gambler. Not a dreamer. Not a thrill seeker. This is where most traders go wrong. They have a system, but they don't stick to it when emotions spike. Discipline only matters when it's hard. Which brings us to Step 2. Predefine everything. Before the trade even begins, know your entry. Know your stop loss. Know your target. Know your position size. Pre-commit on paper. Not in your head. Not sort of. Define every parameter before the market opens. Because once you're in the heat of the moment, your brain is flooded with cortisol. You can't trust it. You'll want to move your stop. You'll want to close early. You'll want to skip the trade. That's fear talking. But when everything is predefined, you don't negotiate. You execute. You follow the plan. Elite traders don't wing it. They don't trade on hope. They lock the plan before the first candle forms, and they stick to it no matter what they feel. Because once the game starts, it's too late to build a strategy. And now for the final and often most ignored piece of the process. Step 3. Journal the fear after, not during. Here's the trap. Most traders try to solve fear in real time. They start overthinking, overanalyzing, pacing, tweaking their plan mid-trade. Don't do that. You can't fix fear while you're inside it. What you do instead is journal it afterwards. What did you feel? When did it show up? What thought ran through your head when you hesitated, or exited early, or didn't take the trade? Write it down. Track the patterns. Because fear isn't random. It follows triggers. And once you see those triggers clearly, you can build systems to neutralize them. Pilots do this. Athletes do this. Soldiers do this. They debrief. They review. They learn. You should too. Because the goal isn't to feel fearless. It's to feel the fear and move anyway. With a system. With preparation. With post-trade awareness. You are not trying to eliminate emotion. You're trying to make emotion irrelevant to your execution. That's the power of this 3-step process. System over emotion. Predefine everything. Journal the fear. You run this cycle daily and fear loses control over you. Now let's build on this. If fear is chaos, then preparation is the antidote. It's time to step into the mindset of those who must remain calm in life or death scenarios. Pilots, let's talk about how to build your pilot mindset and fly through market turbulence without flinching. Do you ever wonder how a fighter pilot keeps calm at 30,000 feet? While flying at Mach 2, under missile lock? It's not luck. It's not talent. It's training. Pilots don't hope for the best. They prepare for the worst. And when things go wrong, and they always do, they fall back on checklists, systems, and mental rehearsals. That's what makes them elite. Now let's bring it back to trading. The charts are your cockpit. The market? Your battlefield. And fear? It's turbulence, guaranteed to show up. So the question is, will you spiral into panic? Or will you fly through it like a professional? Because here's the harsh truth. Fear thrives in chaos. It feeds on surprise, on the unexpected, on the unprepared. When a trader doesn't expect the loss, when they haven't thought through the drawdown, when they assume this trade will work, and it doesn't, that's when fear strikes hardest. And that's exactly why preparation is your best defense. Elite traders don't just plan their trades. They pre-visualize every outcome, especially the bad ones. They rehearse, what if this trade fails immediately? What will I do if I take 3 losses in a row? How will I respond if I hit my max drawdown for the week? They've already seen the storm in their minds before it ever hits the chart. That mental rehearsal, it builds emotional muscle. It tells your nervous system, this isn't danger, this is expected. And when something is expected, it's no longer terrifying. Think about this. The same turbulence that sends a passenger into panic barely registers with a pilot. Why? Because the pilot trained for it. You need the same mindset. Here's what it looks like in trading. Before the session starts, walk yourself through possible scenarios. Visualize taking a trade that loses instantly. See yourself calmly accepting it, logging it, moving on. Visualize missing a trade that then runs 5R without you. Feel the frustration. Then watch yourself return to discipline, not revenge. Visualize hitting your daily stop loss. Feel the temptation to break your rules. Then see yourself stepping away from the screen with integrity. This is mental flight simulation. And the more you run these reps, the calmer you become when the real thing happens. Because confidence doesn't come from winning. It comes from knowing what to do when you lose. You stop needing every trade to work. You stop tying your identity to the outcome. And that's when you start to trade with poise, prepared, unshaken, professional. Most traders live in reactive mode. They respond emotionally because they never planned logically. Don't be like most traders. Be the one who walks into the storm already knowing where the exits are. Because when you've trained your mind to expect turbulence, it stops feeling like a threat. It starts feeling like just another part of the flight. But let's take this deeper. Being prepared is powerful, but it only works if you're focused on the right goal. And most traders, they're chasing outcomes, profits, wins, ego validation. That's a trap. Because when your identity is tied to the result, every loss feels like a personal failure. So how do we fix that? By shifting from outcome obsession to process mastery. Let's talk about the one mindset shift that kills panic once and for all. Process over outcome. Every losing trader has one thing in common. They need every trade to work. They treat each setup like it's the one that must deliver. The savior, the jackpot, the redemption arc. And that pressure, it kills them. Because when you tie your identity, your confidence, and your sanity to the outcome of a single trade, you give all your power to the market. And the market? It doesn't care. Let me ask you something. Would a casino panic if someone won one hand of blackjack? Of course not. Because they don't play the game hand by hand. They play it over thousands of repetitions. The outcome of one spin means nothing. What matters is the process, the statistical edge playing out over time. Now imagine if that same casino manager started sweating every hand, started changing the rules mid-game, started chasing back every loss. That casino would collapse in a week. And that's exactly what most traders do. They obsess over outcomes, not execution. They forget the market is a feedback machine. It's not a reward system. It's not your boss, your parent, your therapist, or your judge. It's a mirror, and it reflects your process, nothing more. You can't control the next candle, but you can control how well you follow your rules. You can't guarantee a green trade, but you can guarantee consistency. And in that control, that detachment, fear fades. Let me tell you about a trader I once coached. He had a solid system, great win rate. But every time a trade went red, he'd spiral. Overthink, micromanage, exit early. Then re-enter in frustration. Classic outcome chaser. When we finally stripped it back, the truth came out. He wasn't afraid of losing money. He was afraid of being wrong. That's what drives the addiction to outcomes. Ego. But professional traders, they don't care about being right on this trade. They care about being disciplined over 1,000 trades. They think like statisticians. They manage risk like engineers. They measure performance in years, not hours. Their focus isn't, did I win? Did I follow my process? Because they know something amateurs don't. The process is the edge, not the setup, not the signal, not the market conditions. Your behavior, that's the edge. And the more you reinforce process-based thinking, the less panic you feel when the trade goes red. You stop micromanaging. You stop obsessing. You stop needing every trade to save you. The market becomes data. The trade becomes just one of many. And suddenly, you can breathe. So here's the shift. Don't ask, did this trade work? Ask, did I do my job? And your job is the process. If you can master that mindset, if you can let go of needing a specific result, you become unstoppable. Because fear feeds on outcomes. But discipline lives in process. And when your identity shifts from gambler to executor, the game changes forever. Now let's take that shift all the way home. In this final chapter, it's time to ask the hardest question of all. Who are you becoming? The gambler chasing outcomes, or the professional building a future? Let's finish strong. You've come this far. You've seen fear for what it really is, a master manipulator. A quiet thief. A mirror that reflects back the parts of you that are still undisciplined, reactive, and emotional. Now here's the moment of truth. You can't dabble in trading and expect professional results. You can't treat this like a hobby and survive the storm because of the market. It doesn't care. It punishes hesitation. It exploits emotion. Exposes every weakness. Not immediately, but eventually. That's why this isn't about strategy. It's about identity. So ask yourself, who are you really becoming? Are you the gambler, hoping the next trade will fix everything? Chasing dopamine hits, switching systems, sizing up when you should be walking away? Are you the one that listens to fear, exiting early, skipping setups, tweaking rules mid-flight? Are you trading from emotion or execution? Because gamblers react, professionals train. They prepare for adversity. They rehearse discomfort. They know fear will knock, and they answer with discipline, not panic. The difference? It's not talent. It's not intelligence. It's standards. Professionals show up regardless of how they feel. They've built routines, rules, and resilience that keep them anchored. They journal, they review, they adapt. And when the pressure hits, they rise because they've trained for it. Gambling is random. Professionals are repeatable. This is your fork in the road. You can keep chasing signals and blame the market every time it turns against you. You can keep letting fear push you around, trade after trade, until there's nothing left. Or you can draw the line, right here, right now, and decide, I'm done trading like a gambler. I'm done letting fear run the show. I will become the professional who executes no matter what. Because in the end, trading isn't about beating the market. It's about mastering yourself. And if you can do that, if you can step up, take control, and build the mindset of a disciplined executor, then the market becomes your proving ground, not your prison. So here's your call to action. Tear up the excuses. Burn the need for perfection. Choose your identity, gambler or professional, because one reacts to fear, and the other makes fear irrelevant. It's your move.